Hi Noteboard Gamers, and welcome back to Noteboard Gaming. I'm your host, I'm Mark. Now in today's video we're going to be previewing a game which hits Kickstarter on the 22nd of March, and the link will be in the description below. And that game is a wonderfully entitled Fire for Light, designed by Wil Sobel and coming from Greenbrier Games. Now Fire for Light is a solo or cooperative, it's 1 to 4 players, kind of emergent, branching, story-driven, adventure, survival, dungeon crawling game where you, as a solo gamer, are going to take on 1 of 4 characters, and you're going to use the other 3 characters as your sidekicks and explore this land, doing various tasks and quests, etc., unlocking new items. You see, it really is a branching narrative game. There's an entire storybook that goes with the game, and you will complete certain quests in that storybook and certain parts of quests in storybooks. You'll tick things off on a sheet, which allows you to then track where your progress is and what you've unlocked. And each time you play, it will be different. Now, the game comes with 15 main quests, and there also is the opportunity to open up additional quests depending on what you do whilst you're working through those main quests. It's got some wonderful mechanics in there. We have dice play, we have adventuring, we have fighting, we have crafting of items and weapons, and we also have like a solar clock and also a dark clock, which is going to be working against you as a timer. So what I'm going to do is take you through kind of an overview on what it is, how it works, and a very brief run through of the rules, and then we'll discuss my thoughts on the solo experience of Fire for Light. Now, just before I do that, I will say that this is obviously a prototype. It's a preview copy. It hits Kickstarter on the 22nd of March. Link will be in the description below. So obviously all these elements are subject to change. It's by no means the final artwork and final assets. And also I'm not going to be able to spoil anything, because what they've done is they've created a couple of preview copy quests, if you like. Now I'm not going to go in depth on these anyway, because they're pretty fun. And if you want to see a full playthrough, then please check out Adam Smith's Rolling Solo channel, and he's done a full playthrough of Fire for Light for you. So I'm just going to do a relatively light touch on the solo game and just let you know how it plays. So let's have a look at Fire for Light, coming from Greenbrier Games, designed by Wil Sobel. So as I said, Fire for Light is a narrative, story-driven game with branching narratives, and it's 1 to 4 players cooperative. And it's set in the village of Summer's End, and you're going to play 1 of 4 characters. That would be Uop, who's a kind of robot. That would be Nari. This female looks like she can throw kind of blue bolts of magic, etc. It could be Jasper, who's this kind of tank-looking dude with a big hammer. Or it could be Iris, who's an axe-wielding female with pretty deadly to handle, to tell you the truth. As a solo gamer, you're going to pick 1 main character. Now I've chosen Uop for this particular run through, but the other characters aren't wasted. You see, you're going to use them as sidekicks, and you get to use their actions on their turns in the game, and I'll explain how that works in a bit. You're going to be traversing across this dynamic map, and its setup is different for each adventure that you play, and it has different things on there, resources to gather. Maybe there are items that have fallen that you need to uncover. There are baddies on the map as well, which you're going to have to combat to get to the objectives of your quest, and they may be many and varied, and they can change throughout the scenario as well. So you'll have main objective, and then when you've done that, there may be other things that you need to complete. Now, as you can see here as well, there are some lifted portions on the map. Now, with this in a preview copy, it doesn't have the properly lifted, the proper stands to lift it. But in the final copy, there will be stands that lift certain portions of the map, because what happens is you will have elevated portions. They take more movement points to move up and down from, and if you fall off them, or the baddies fall off them, they can become stunned effectively on those. So they can fall and become stunned, and therefore you've got to kind of use that to your advantage and try and use a tactical advantage of having these raised areas as you move up and move down and try to push baddies off them, etc. There are also areas on the map that are blocked out, which means that you have to take a long way around to do it. And also, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's a survival game, so the elements play a big part in this. And at the end of every round that you've played, there's a part where you have to then try and combat against the elements. You have to have enough left, or you have to have enough instances of warmth to stop the elements coming and damaging you. So that's kind of a brief overview. I could really go in depth a lot about the story, but even on these preview copies, where on the first adventure, which I'm going to show you, there's a downed meteorite, you want to go and find it. I don't want to spoil too much, because I think, you know, having played this a few times now, having played the two scenarios that come with a preview copy, it unfolds in a really, really good story. And I think that's absolutely key for a kind of story-based narrative game, is you want a good, cohesive story. And that's exactly what this provides you. No matter what path you take, the story is cohesive and it's interesting. So let me show you the setup of a solo game. So here in front of us we have a game set up for the first tutorial scenario in the prototype copy of Fire for Light. I'll just go through a few of the components. So, as I mentioned, there are 4 characters to choose from, and I've chosen Uop, who's kind of a robot type character. Now Uop comes with 5 activation cubes, and that's these here. All the other characters come with 4, and that's how many that's how many goes they get on their turn. Now that can increase or decrease depending on various things that happen. You can have some of these cubes taken away, or you may gain bonus cubes as well, which are these here, which allow you to take some other actions as well. But not only that, as you go through the action row, and I'll explain how that works in a second, any of the sidekicks, you get to use their cubes as well. And in the solo game, all the other 3 characters are sidekicks, and they all come with 3 cubes. So you can see on here that there are 4 actions there that Uop can take, and he's got his start with 3 item cards. Now you will get more items as the game progresses, because you will craft them from up here. These items at some point will come out into the blueprint area. Then you can craft them using various resources and add more cards to your hand. And you're going to want to do that because they've got shields on there, and shields help you when you're being attacked. So Uop can take any of these actions on here on his turn, and he can take any of these actions using any of these cards here, almost any of these actions. You see, on some of them, it's not a great example, there are 2 actions. Now, if there's no little intervening cascading arrow between them, you can take either or both of those actions. However, if there is an arrow, like there is here, that's a cascading action. That means you have to at least take or put a cube on the first action to be able to take the second action. Sometimes you may not have any need for the first action, but you want to use a second, so you're going to have to waste an activation cube to activate that, not use it, and then activate the next one. If there's no arrow, it's not a cascading action, and therefore you can take any or both of the, I should say all of the actions on that card. And say Uop will start with 5 cubes. That means he can take any of these. We have attack, which gives him 2 of these white dice to attack with, and I'll speak about attack in a bit. We have explore, which allows him to explore the map. He can gather resources. And he can also, by exploring, if he explores in a certain way, unlock cards from the blueprint pile, from the items pile, which go into the blueprints, which will allow him to craft. But also, by exploring as well, throughout the map there are these little, and you may not be able to see it just there, that says A03, that's a story prompt. So if he explores in that particular area, he will unlock a particular story prompt from the storybook that comes with the game, and that will then start creating these divergent narratives. So he can attack, he can explore, he can move up to 3 there, doesn't have to move 3, so use that and he can move 3 of these along there. And he can also recharge, and recharge allows him, because once you've used these cards, they're going to your discard pile, so recharge then allows him to take cards back out of that pile again, and also move away from his 2 states. You see, each adventurer has 2 states. There is either, on Uop, it's slightly different for Uop, he is a slightly different character because he's a robot. He's either functional or he's broken, but if you look at the other characters, they are either aware or startled. Now, if they're aware, they generally have a higher a higher influence number up here, and if they're startled they have a lower influence number, and that affects where they go in the cube. And they all start as aware on there, so I'll just put those cubes back on there. So your sidekick starts as aware, and UOP starts as functional, but it's the same as aware, it's just a slightly different word because of course he is a robot. So I mentioned the map here. Now I've elevated this map actually in the first one. That's not elevated, but I wanted to elevate just to show you you know, it's played in a dynamic and three-dimensional space as well. So not only do you have kind of forwards and backwards and left and right to go, you have up and down to go on the map as well. And over here, as I mentioned, we have the kind of main board, if you like, where you're going to get items from. But there's also some further actions up here. So if you build a campfire, if one of the UOP's actions, not only can they take the actions on here, they can also make a campfire. And that would put a campfire token on the board. And say they made a campfire there. That then gives them access to all of these cascading actions here. So you have craft, rest and ready, rest, craft and explore, rest, explore and ready. So you can do those cascading actions if you make a camp, and that also, if you use a craft item, allows you to craft whatever items, a craft action allows you to craft whatever items come up in the blueprint area. A couple of final things to show you is up here we have your spirit, okay? So throughout the game you can use spirit in various ways, or it gets taken away from you. It has an effect on your end of game score as well. And that starts for the solo game on 7, and it's more players that are in there, then you know your spirit will start lower. And you also have a day or night dial. You see, rather uniquely, the game takes place over either daytime or nighttime. So if it's daytime, you know, the amount of sun kind of increases as you go through the game. That has an effect on one of the phases. Same in nighttime, but what happens there in the darkness, should I say, is you have torches that get extinguished as you go. So you start with one on there. So what happens is that's kind of the setup for the game, apart from the action row here. So that's kind of a key part I forgot to mention. So here you would put all of the characters that you've got. So you've got UOP and his sidekicks, but you've also got bad guys. And each scenario play will tell you what bad guys are. So here we have a couple of bandit scouts. Here we go. And we also have this grab tusk, which is like a wild boar type thing. It tells you where to place them, where to place the tiles, where you're going to start, etc. As you lay the cards out, as I mentioned, in the top right, you have this initiative order. I said influence, I meant initiative. And each one is different. But you can see, as I mentioned, if UOP goes from functional to broken, his initiative falls down to 3. So you lay these out in order of initiative. Now, we can see that the Bandit Scout has got an 8. So that means on the first go, they're going to go first. So it's going to be Bandit Scout, UOP, Nari, we have Jasper, Iris, and then the grab tusk down at the end there. So as they go, what will happen is they will, first of all, they'll take all of these actions in order. So we can see that on this first Bandit Scout's go, it's going to deal 1 damage to an explorer in his region. There are no explorers in the region. Then it will move 2 towards the nearest explorer. So they will move 2 towards me. And finally, any explorer in my region becomes startled. So that will flip over this card to the startled if they were in my arena. The other thing to show you on here is there are the number of shields here. So this is a defense number that you have to win with die rolls when you roll the die. So you on each battle or each combat that you take, you'll roll a certain number of these dice, and you can see they have various things on there. Some have 3 swords, some have 2 swords, some have 1 sword, some have blank faces, and they've also got these on as well, which become apparent in the larger game. You'll roll a set number of dice. So say I've got 4 dice here, and I'm trying to battle this particular Bandit Scout. I'd roll my 4 dice, and then I would count up how many swords I've got there. I've only got 2, so that means I wouldn't have defeated him, and I would suffer a penalty for doing combat with the Bandit Scout and not defeating them. Of course, there are certain cards, certain items, certain tasks that allow you to manipulate dice, add more dice, etc. And that's the aim of the game, is to kind of build up the power of your player. So the game will take place over 2 phases. We have the Explorer phase, which is where you're going to run through this entire action row, if you like, of characters from left to right in order of initiative. That will change throughout the game depending on the initiative that's there. UOP, the Bandit Scouts will go first, then it will be UOP, and I'll use all these action cubes. Then I'll use Nari's action cubes. Now, when you use the Sidekick's action cubes, you cannot use them on your main board. You can only use the action cubes on their actions or up on the campfire board, okay? So that's a really big restriction, because you can't kind of leave some of your actions available for your sidekicks to use. They can only use their actions and the actions on the main board. So as I mentioned, Bandit Scout will go, then Uop, then Nari, then Jasper, then Iris, then the Grub Tusk. That's the end of the Explorer phase. Then we will move into the environment phase. And the environment phase is the end of the day. You can work out how cold you are at the end of that day and a few other things. But we'll cover that as we go through a round of the game. So this first tutorial scenario is called Catch a Falling Star. And if you look over here, it's told me to place a green token there. That's because a meteorite has fallen, and this falling star has fallen there. And the village elders have said, I tell you what, go off and get that and bring it back. And maybe it'll change our fortunes. It would be a great offering. So you're going to venture out from the village into the wastelands to try and recapture or claim this fallen star, and you can take it back, and it gives you a choice of characters you can take it back to as well when you get to that point, and that can change the eventual story. So what we're going to do is play through a round, as I say, of Fire for Light. You know kind of the objectives here. We've got to get that fallen star. That may open up other things if we get it. And one of the first things you'll notice is this red line just here. And I'll just move this guy because he was in the wrong place. It is this red line. And what that red line means is there's no direct access that way. This bandit would have to come around here to get to me, and vice versa. I would have to go around there to get to him. So I mentioned the kind of the awareness row up here and how you take it in initiative order, and the shields and how much I need to kind of defeat them by. So let's go into a round of this. So we start in initiative order, and we're going to go up with the Bandit Scout. So he's initiative number 8. I need 5 to defeat him. My reward would be to do a campfire if I did that. His first action is to deal 1 damage to an explorer in their region. Well, as you can see, there's no explorers in their region. So their next action would be to move 2 regions towards the nearest explorer. So we'll take this one first. 1, 2. You're always going to get close to me if possible. Haha. And this one, 1, 2, into my particular area. So this is now in my area, but they're not attacked me because that was their first action. Finally, down here, it says any explorer in my region becomes startled. So we look at my character, and it's Uop in there. They're going to become startled, so we're going to flip that round, and the initiative is 3. That means next turn, their initiative will move. They will move on the initiative board. So that's the 2 Bandit Scouts done. Now it's on to Uop to move. Now, you can move through bad guys. You don't have to fight them if you don't want to, but you can move through them and try and gather resources, etc. So what I think I want to do is potentially try to get some wood. So the first thing I'm going to do, take one of my action cubes, and I'm going to put it on move 3. Now, Uop can only use these actions and those actions. They can't use any of the sidekicks actions, and the sidekicks can only use their actions and the top board actions. So I'm going to move 3, and I think I'm going to move round here to try and get some wood. Because if I get wood, I can build a campfire. If I build a campfire, I can hopefully craft some items as well. So what we'll do is we'll do the move 3, and we'll move this way. 1, 2, 3 onto this particular area here. So for my next move, I think I'm going to explore. Now, had I been on this space here, or this space here that have got numbers on them, if I was to explore, I'd read the relevant entry in the storybook, but I'm not. I'm on this space here and I'm exploring. So what that does, it takes the top item on the items deck and puts it into the blueprint row ready for crafting. So what have we got here? We've got a hunting bow, which is great. It gives me 1 shield. Now, you're going to need shields if you get attacked. And it's got 2 cascading actions. It allows me to attack with 2 white dice in an adjacent area, so it's a bit of a range shot. And it also allows me to assist, and assist is helping other characters on the board. Down at the bottom it says the craft, I need wood for it, and for design, which becomes apparent in the latest game, there's the campfire token. But this is what I'm interested in here, which is really fortunate because I've gone onto that particular area. So the next thing I'm going to do then is I potentially want to gather some resources. Now, up on my main board, I've got attack, explore, move and recharge. That doesn't allow me to gather. But if I look down here at my items and I have a look here, what have we got? We got some explorability here. So if I use this item, I can explore again, and then I can gather 2 resources. But that is going to cost me 2 cubes to gather that, because of course explore, I have to either do that or put action cube on there before I do that. So let's do that. First thing we shall do is explore again, and we may as well. We're in this area, we'll explore again. And you take another item card and put it into the blueprint area. Oh, what's this? It's the Cauldron of Bloodfire. It needs a mountain range to do it, and it gives me some additional actions on there with a shield. I can move out of a region with a foe, move them with me. I can move 3, and then I can read Rising Bloodfire, which is in the storybook. So that goes into my hand there, so that's available for me to use right now. So that's the first one, and the second one is to gather 2. So we should gather 2 resources. Now, I'm in a wood area, so I'm going to gather 2 resources, which is good, which is these 2 here, and those will go onto my player board. Now what I would like to do is build a campfire so I can craft, but unfortunately I've only got 1 action cube left. That's not great for now. However, my sidekicks are going to help me out. So we'll take this final action cube, and we're going to put it on this board up here, make a campfire. We're going to spend 1 of my wooden resources, which is good, and we're going to take the campfire token and put it there. I now have an instance of warmth. That's really important. If I don't move away from there and the environment phase, that could be really important for me. UOP has now used all of their action cubes, okay? So there's no more action cubes to use there. So now we move down onto the next one, and we have Nari. And I've got 3 action cubes I can use there. Assist, explore, gather 2, or move 2. So what do I want to do? There's real benefit in keeping some of these action cubes for the end of the round. You can see that my initiative is number 3. That moves me right down the queue to here. However, for every action cube that you haven't used at the end of the round, you move up the initiative track. So it could be useful for me to use to keep some of these cubes. What can we do? I'll tell you what we can do. I can't move 2 to there, down there. I could... Let's see. I could move 2. I can put it on move 2, which takes me down to here. And then I can explore, which allows me to read the storybook. So let's talk about the storybook. So here we have the story for A04. That's the region that I'm on. And it says, bandits seem to have set up camp here. By the looks of it, they've been here for quite a while. Why are they so close to the village? That's not normal. The camp is littered with broken weapons and rotted food. Where did all this come from? Other villagers? It's not like the bandits have a central location. They're nomads. These wanderers roam the forest and the nearby canyon, living off scraps. The only point of interest you find is a piece of parchment with a note with a childlike scribbled handwriting. Something's wrong with Seda. Andri. You've heard of Andri before. He's a mighty bandit warrior and a menace within these woods. If he's near, it's best to keep a low profile. Place the top 2 item cards into the blueprint and then gather a hide, and then check the Andri box in the prologue summary page. So there is a page that comes with this where you fill things in. That's telling me to do that, but what I'm going to do is place the top 2 items into the blueprint. So this gives me access now to a shield, which I need a hide to do, and it also gives me access to the Orb of Haste, which I need a mountain thing to do, so rock to do. It gives me an awareness token and a move of 3 as well. So suddenly my blueprint for crafting has become really, really, really good. But remember, I can't craft because I've Yeah, I've run out of action cubes there. So that was a pretty good thing for them to do. They moved on to there, we explored, and we read that story. We've still got one left, and his two things are assist and gather. That means I'm not really going to use them, so I'm going to keep that to one side. So that's Nari's turn. Then we're going to move on to Jasper's turn. He's got attack, gather 2, explore, or craft. Craft, which is really, really good. I'm going to take a craft action. Now, I could actually have used Nari's cube up there on the campfire, but it's okay. We've got Jasper's cube here, so I'm going to take his yellow cube and put it on the craft item there. I've got one wood left, which is that one there. Oops, sorry, that should have gone up there, shouldn't it? I've got one wood left, which is there. So we'll put that back, and we should craft this bow. So now I have a bow in my hands, which is good because, of course, it allows me to do some long-range attacks in adjacent regions. But it also gives me a shield as well. So we're going to put that just there in my hand, and that's good for that. So that was Nari's done there. He's got also explore, gather 2, or craft. Explore, gather 2, or attack. Well, I can't attack because there's nobody in my region, and also there's nobody in an adjacent region where I can use that. I could rest, I suppose, but I don't really want to just yet. So I'm going to keep Jasper's 2 action cubes because I don't want to attack. I could craft again if I had the resources. I don't have any resources. I can't move anywhere, so I can't craft anything. So craft, rest, and ready. Ready is an option for my next go if I wanted to take that, which I may well do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that item there, which is craft. I have rest there, which will allow me to take some cards back, but I haven't actually finished using the cards yet. They're not going to my discard pile. And that means on a subsequent go, I can ready. Now, what ready will allow me to do is flip Uop back to his kind of, what is it on him? His functional side, and everybody else it's an aware side. So I'm good for that on potentially Iris's go. So I've still got one cube unused so far, which is here. I've used all of Jasper's cubes, and now we've got Iris. They can attack, shove, move 1, or attack. Okay, so I think we've got a plan here. First thing we're going to do is we can put Jasper's cube on there and ready, and flip me back to a 6. That means I'm, for the next round, I'm good to go. The next thing we're going to use one of Jasper's cubes for is to move 1. And we're going to move back to the campfire. And the campfire is an instance of warmth. And the third thing that we're going to do with theirs is nothing. We're going to keep that there. So I have 2 unused cubes. I'll show you how important that is in a second. So that's the Bandit Scout gone, Uop's gone, all 3 Psychics are gone, and now it's down to the Grab Tusk. There's only one Grab Tusk on the board. They've got initiative of 1 and shields of 4, and get a hide from them if I defeat them. I should have got a hide from there, shouldn't I? There we go. From exploring on AO4. The first one is deal damage equal to my rage to an explorer in my region. There is no explorer in their region. What happens is they build up these rage tokens, or the Grab Tusk builds up a rage token if they're in the same area as an explorer. So that didn't happen. If I'm in a region with an explorer, gain 1 rage token. There we go. They're not. So they would move 1 region towards the nearest explorer. So they are honing in on me. So you can see that the bad guys are constantly moving towards you. So that is the end of all of the turns within that particular awareness track. And we've not done too bad. We've gathered resources. We've unlocked story AO4. We've got the crafting going, the firelight going. I'm next to a campfire. We've crafted this particular hunting bow, and we've moved away. We're closer to this, where we need to go, but this is a game where you don't want to rush towards the objectives. You want to try and explore. I want to potentially go over here and have a look at AO3, what that unveils there. I also want to potentially get some more resources and maybe engage in some combat. So that's the end of going through that awareness row. Now we're on to the environment phase. So we know this sundial is up at a 1. So what you're going to do is roll a number of dice equal to what's on that sundial. It's number up at 1, so there's 1 dice. But also, if you look on the board, you can see these various frost symbols. They're exposure symbols. And if you're on one of those, you would add a dice to it as well. So that means I'm going to be rolling 2 dice. Now, if I roll more swords than I have total action cubes, and I have 5 action cubes, that's going to hurt me. So let's have a look what we roll. I rolled 3 there, so my exposure is fine. I'm under the 5 total action cubes that I've got, and as I mentioned, you can lose action cubes throughout the game as well, so as that racks up and you start to lose these, that exposure becomes really, really important. So that's the first part of the environment phase done. One thing I forgot to mention is that I rolled 2 dice, got 3 as we know on there, but I do have an instance of warmth, so for every instance of warmth that you have, that can be on item cards, it can be on certain things that unlock, but certainly a campfire is it. I would get the ability to re-roll one of these dice. So say if I'd rolled 6, basically. So I'd rolled, here we go, I'd rolled 6 of the swords, which is over the 5 action cubes. Because I'm in an area of warmth where that campfire is, it would allow me to roll 1 more. That would have come up as a 3 anyway there. And therefore that gives you that ability. The next thing in the exposure, in the environment phase, is the extinguish step. And that's where you would take the campfire token and you would put it back over on that board over there, ready to light a campfire the next round. And also what you would do as well, if there are any kind of till the end of this round tokens on the board, you would remove those. And then what you would do is turn the light dial as well up to the next value. So it's on number 2 now. That means obviously at the start of the next environment phase, I'm going to be rolling a minimum of 2 of these dice. So you can see that getting progressively harder as you go along. Okay, final is the excise step. And this is where these cubes come in handy, okay? Because for each unused cube that you've got, you get to move up the initiative phase, the initiative row by 1. Now, bear in mind that if Uop had done that at the end of his turn, he would have been down here basically, but we're not. We're on a 6. Remember, we did the ready action, so we're on a 6, and I've got 2 unused cubes. That means I can move up to an 8, so I can effectively go 1 ahead of the bandit. That means I get first go next round. That's not always going to be the case, because on most rounds you're going to be using most of those particular cubes. The final part of the exercise step is we're going to reclaim all of my action cubes, so all 5 action cubes. Okay, all of these go into where they were. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Oops, that's already there. 3. There we go. So you got those. And this card is now going in my discard pile. That's unusable until I take an action which allows me to pull cards back out of there. So crafting becomes pretty important as you start playing the game, because you want access to more cards, not only for defense, but the more you start using these cards, then the more you're going to have to take a recharge or a rest or a ready action, recharge or a rest action, which allows you to pull cards back out of there. You don't want some of your best cards being in there for too long, because as it comes to combat, it becomes pretty bloody tricky. So that's it. That's kind of the first round done there. We've done okay. We've explored a little bit. We're not quite down at the objective, but I wouldn't want to rush that anyway. Need to go and gather some resources, start crafting my items. And that's the first round. As you can see, it's pretty simplistic to play as well. Not in a bad way, but I think the ease of play makes it a really accessible game, whilst providing a really, really good challenge. We've also looked into the storybook. We've seen some of the stuff that unfolds in there. Not going to show you much more, because depending on how you do in each scenario, opens up various things for you. That's a round done of Fire for Light. Now, as you can see, it's a relatively straightforward game to get to grips with, but there's a lot of depth here as well, because you really have to start about making the most of your adventure. Don't rush through it purely for those objectives, because you're going to miss out on the core fun of the game. The core fun is kind of moving around the map, increasing your character strengths by getting the items cards and having more abilities, and trying to do the manipulation on your sidekicks cubes on what they can do to try and maximize the most that you can get out of the turns. And I really like this sidekick idea. It means there are no wasted turns or characters in the game. And of course, as the game progresses, the item stack will get bigger and bigger, and you get more kind of better items in there, the stronger that you are as well. Like the integration of the storybook. Now, I've got it on my phone at the moment, but it's not, it will come with a full storybook, so there's no app integration on this if you don't want it. And that's really good as well, because you have these branching narratives. It means you can play and replay the game. I think one of the key things I absolutely adore about this game is its accessibility. The rules are still in kind of very early beta stage, and they need some tweaking and some fleshing out, if you like. But it's not a difficult game to play. I haven't really touched on on some of the nuances as well. So things like these initiative roles that you can get on here, or how the spirit works on the board, because you can use spirit to pay for things. But if you end up on 0 spirit, then that can have an adverse effect, or it can mean that you lose that particular adventure. But the total of those things, along with other things that you've got, so how much spirit you've got left at the end of the game, gives you your end of game, your end of scenario score, and guides you on where you're going to go next. Now, as I mentioned, that storybook is really, really good, and I like the fact that it's branching. It reminds me, the game, of a more accessible version of something like Midara. Now, if you played Midara, you know it's this huge sprawling dungeon crawler of a game, lots of facets, lots of story, lots of interlinking parts, and it can be very overwhelming as your characters start to increase. You've suddenly got this full tableau of cards that your character has access to. So this does give me a Midara style feel, but on a more accessible level. And I say, with 15 main quests, with chances to have other branching quests come off there, the replayability is limitless. I think it's a really, really fantastic iteration on dungeon crawling survival games. The way that you have to find these elements of water, you have to forage for resources to be able to do something. You have to sacrifice certain things that you want to do in lieu of doing other things. It's not always about combat. Combat is good because you get rewards from combat, but it can be extremely punishing as well as you take damage. And when you take damage, you're going to start potentially losing cubes or losing items out of your hand, your cards out of your hand, etc. And that becomes a particularly painful thing to do when you built up this great thing and a great deck of cards, and you have to lose a card. It becomes a really painful thing to do. And also, your initial objective may not be the overall objective on any particular adventure. Once you've done that, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to open up potential other quests for you to do. I've only had a taster of this so far, obviously with having the 2 scenarios. I really enjoy everything it's got to offer. I think my only potential criticism is that, like all of these adventure games that have branching narratives and various things you can look at in the book, it tells you not to read any of the others. But of course, it's going to be impossible for some people to resist that. What I'd like to see in there is, like they've done in Midara, and like they do on the contamination cards in Nemesis, is have the red thing that you put in front of it that tells you what that is under there. That means everything else is kept absolutely secret, and I think that's really, really good. Because I'd hate this adventure to be spoiled by people reading potential possibilities for the best rewards and then following that path. So it'd be good if they could, in the rule book, kind of in the storybook, just kind of mask that a little bit better. I think, as mentioned, this is the prototype, but even for a prototype, it looks very, very good. I like the element of kind of raised elevation on certain tiles as well. It's got a lot going on for it, this game, and I think if you're in the mood for an adventure dungeon crawling survival game, and you don't want something that is prohibitively heavy like Midara can be, then this really scratches that itch. I think it'd be really good for younger players to get to grips with as well. I'm not seeing anything too traumatic in any of these storybooks, so I don't think it's necessarily massively mature in theme. But there is an element of peril and danger there as well. So I think, if you've got young gamers, maybe 8, 10, 12 and above, who are interested in doing a Midara style campaign, then this would be really good for them. So for me, I can't recommend Fire for Light enough. I think it's an absolutely fantastic game. I've only had a smidgen of a touch of what's available and what's going to be in the final game, and I'm already itching to find out more. I want to find out what happens to the residents of Summer's End, what happens, how the different characters interplay each other. When you play through it with one character, you could also play through it with another character, just to find out how their abilities help you on your quest as well. Utterly fantastic, utterly charming, and I think, as I say, if you're looking for a dungeon crawling, survival type narrative game, story-based game, then you really need to be checking out Fire for Light by Greenbrier Games and designed by Wil Sobel. It's an absolute pleasure to play. So thank you very much for joining me through this journey on Fire for Light by Greenbrier Games, designed by Wil Sobel. Bear in mind, the Kickstarter launched on the 22nd of March. The link will be in the description below. My name's Mark. This is Not Board Gaming. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out our other videos. And one final thought. If you can't find anyone else to play with, there's nothing wrong with playing with yourselves. Until next time, bye-bye.